And I will tell you that this is an open meeting. Posted right around the corner here is the actual Open Meeting Act. As always, would you stand with us, join for a moment of silence, and then as well the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Granquist,
Here.
Langy,
Here.
Merrill,
Here.
Clausen,
Here.
Murin,
Here.
Moaning,
Here.
Faust,
Here.
File.
Here.
All right, and under action, I would ask for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. Please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right, and as well, approval of the full agenda as presented you. A motion, please.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Motion with a second to approve the full agenda. Again, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
Okay. We have one item tonight on our regular agenda, and that's consideration of Resolution 2014-43 related to the conditional use permit for Off-Road Ranch LLC to operate a stock car racetrack. Resolution 2014-43 was tabled at the October 20th, 2014 City Council meeting. So with that, I would look for a motion to take that resolution off the table.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to take the resolution off the table.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. We need to vote on this, if you would, please.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right, and next, in your packet was the A, B, or C. So we need to, I'm looking for introduction of one of either A, B, or C.
Your Honor, I'd move to consider the version C of the resolution and to move to amend the tabled version of C by replacing it with the modified version of C.
All right,
Does that make sense?
counsel, do you understand what he's doing there? What he's looking for is introduction of C, Resolution C, and then using the version C after the changes that were made and discussed. So we're actually looking at C, but looking at those replaced conditions.
With the subcommittee changes.
Yeah, with the subcommittee change. Do I need to read any of that into this, Clint? Keep me clean here.
Second that, so that it's got a second.
Your Honor, for clarification, would the original version C be amended then in the
Yes.
process, or do we have to pass an amendment?
Maybe the easiest way to do that is you have a motion and a second, just introduce version C and then
And then a
seek to
second.
amend it, if that's
Okay.
what the desire is.
So Councilman, can I ask you, do we have a second? Did you?
Yes, I second it.
You did second that, with the amendment pulled together. So is that confusing to do it that way, Clint?
why don't you just take and introduce version C and then vote on that and then deal with any amendment
Okay,
that might
so
come.
can we forget where he's been, pull back where he's been, and just ask then that you introduce version C?
I move to consider version C of the resolution.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion with a second to review Resolution C as was stated in that packet. So I need you to vote on that first, please.
Your Honor, discussion, do we have time for discussion then before the vote?
On C, certainly. Yeah, okay. My fault.
Okay.
Before you do that, Councilman, I'm going to let Councilman Clausen make a statement here so that everybody is aware of the action that the councilman has taken. Please bear with us tonight. This is kind of an awkward situation for all of us, so bear with us as we go through and make sure that we're keeping this straight. So appreciate that.
Thank you,
Shane?
Your Honor. Thanks for allowing me the time to make a brief statement here. It's been brought to my attention that it's been called to question why I abstained from the last voting process, and maybe I should be a little more transparent as my reasoning behind that. And I think I owe that to the community to be more transparent. At this current time, we're building a home directly by, very close to this property. And in doing so, it clouds a council person's judgment, I feel, and makes you become a little unbiased when you're looking at different issues. At this certain time, I would be, not only concerned about myself and my employment, I'm concerned about the 12 other individuals that work for this, work for our company. When you get on the council, I believe, first and foremost, you're elected to represent your ward, and then you're elected to represent your community. And in my situation, being so close to this property and being employed, your judgment becomes cloudy, and you become unbiased in how you're going to vote. And I think in a project that's so important to this community and can have a major impact on our community, I don't believe that a certain individual with cloudy judgment should make a negative impact on the outcome of how this should be perceived or voted on. And so in those situations, I think in my situation, it's best that I abstain.
Okay. So with that, discussion on the introduction of Resolution C that is now on the table for discussion.
Your Honor, I'd make a few comments before we get into
Sure.
any votes. Obviously, this is a big issue, and there's passionate folks on both sides of it, and both sides can make legitimate arguments. Last week, when we were here, I moved one of these options, and that was to reverse the Planning Commission decision on this matter. I did that because I felt there were still too many unanswered questions about the permit itself and the site plan, and not enough effort to perhaps be a good neighbor to those living in the area. But in a good faith effort at that time to allow work to continue to address some of those concerns, I withdrew that motion and moved to table it instead so more work could be done. Here we are a week later. Some of the questions I'd hoped would be addressed, like the impacts of the sound on neighbors and livestock, the impacts of the tract on the surrounding environment, and why this process seemed to be rushed from the beginning, I think are left unanswered. So I can't support moving forward with the permit at this time. I feel like it was, like I said, kind of a shaky process from the beginning, and now for reasons that aren't terribly clear to me, it's I feel being rushed to the finish line. I don't feel necessarily, and we can have, I understand we have discussion, I could be proved wrong, but I don't feel that the permit was ready at the Planning Commission level. I don't think it was ready last week, and I don't think we allowed for enough time for it to be ready today. That said, I'm by no means against racing. In fact, I think you guys, a lot of people made a good argument for racing, a tradition here in Norfolk, and the supporters have shown it's an important family tradition to many people. It's my opinion that now we hit the reset button and ask some important questions, and I think through this discussion tonight, some of those questions will be asked. But I just wanted to say that before we get into process of making any votes tonight.
Okay. I appreciate your comments there, Councilman. Anyone else that wants to speak before we actually?
I just want to say that I have some of the same concerns Josh has. I was not on the subcommittee, so I don't know how some of that got taken care of. I'm very interested tonight to see if we've made enough changes to satisfy my vote on the subject. I've got some very close friends on both sides of the gamut here. I've got some close friends against this, I've got some close friends for it. So it's a very hard decision for all of us, because I know we're all in the same boat. But we have to get the process going and get some of the people up here and get some more testimony, get some more things figured out before I can decide where I'm at, so.
Well, and certainly that's the process. I do want you to understand, I said the last thing I want done is that as volunteers, the Planning Commission, I believe, did the best that they could do with the information that they had. Those are volunteer people that are not in this situation enough to really know maybe what it is, maybe how the city code exactly works, but they know that the staff of the city is responsible for making sure that all codes are followed and are part before that there is a final given agreement, more or less, given to the owners of the requested, request before them. And again, bringing it to the city council is exactly what needed to happen. And I don't disagree that maybe we could have done a better job in the very beginning. However, please understand that it was first brought to the staff in saying that we have opportunity to take over what had been a great facility in the city of Norfolk for over 50 years. And during those years, with the loss of Mr. Hazy, the family made a different decision. So it was those that stepped up to the plate and said, we would like to take that on to allow racing to remain in the city of Norfolk on Saturday evening. And the understanding that I have from them was in order to hold on to Saturday night, they needed to act quickly to be able to get that track in place so that they were ready to go with the start of the next season. Otherwise, another community could grab that from the community of Norfolk. Now again, if maybe we didn't, I think Councilman Moaning has said very accurately that maybe we moved a little too quick. But I always know that staff has the back of the Planning Commission in helping those that are applying for and looking for put together a correct product to then come to us as elected officials. Now, that being said, there certainly were many, many questions by all of you folks and concerns by all of you as we went forward as the elected officials here. We heard those concerns, and obviously, I think the motion was a correct motion last week, whenever that was, to table and come back as the elected officials that are chosen by this community to step back and make sure that we're listening to everyone's concerns and doing the very best that we can to give you a product that will, again, as well as we can, address the issues. And that's what we did. We had conversations, certainly, listen, and as Beth sits here right now and marking all these, and making notes of all these different pieces of the discussion, we sat down as a subcommittee of elected officials because that's the way it needs to be done. There can be no more than 4 elected officials, council people, sitting together trying to discuss and beat out how best we can bring the conditions forward. And so that's where we are now. That's the point of where this council has brought it, with the help of staff, with doing a lot of digging on what it is that might be, at least to the very, very best of our ability, an acceptable CUP, conditional use permit. So, that being said, that's my comments. Anyone else that may have before we move forward?
I guess my question is, what are we moving forward
Right.
with?
Right now,
So for clarity, I guess I would like it, at least the conditional use permit read then, so I know which one the hell I'm looking at.
I appreciate that, Jim. I appreciate that.
I've got C from the last time, I got C from here.
C is the one right now that we're bringing.
Which C?
the-
Can I-
Just- could
Sure,
you read
please
it?
do, Clint.
Here.
Yeah,
When this was put on the table, when this was put at the table at the last meeting, version A, B, and C that were out there went on the table. even though the subcommittee met and had proposed some changes, and those changes are in the agenda as version C, when the motion that's before the council with the motion and the second to remove version C, to introduce version C, that version C is the same one which was tabled. So,
So, let me ask the question then, so that version C was what was sitting in the packet last week, Monday,
that is correct.
that had basically no changes or anything to it? No conditions, no additions or deletions or anything to it?
It was blank.
That's, yes.
It was blank. Now, what would be contemplated here, that if you vote on that version C, and if you got an affirmative vote of that from the elected officials, you would then have version C with the blanks in it. If you wanted to then work from the version C that came from the city council subcommittee meeting, there would need to be an amendment to modify last week's version C to put in those changes that came from the subcommittee meeting.
And that amendment would be at what time?
As soon as, I would suggest that you do that as soon as you, as soon as you voted on this introduction that's got the motion in the second. What I would suggest you consider doing would be moving the subcommittee modified changes into version C as an amendment. And you take them all that were there, and then you deal with them however you as a council decide to do that.
With that, does that make sense?
No,
Okay,
because again, I'm seeing that we're voting on a yea or a nay on version C that has a ton of blanks in it, and it doesn't have,
do you like it better, Jim, if we go back to the way the councilman first introduced it? Voting on version C of the resolution with the amended?
I think at that point, we're skipping a step.
Mayor, Mayor,
Yes.
if I'm understanding it right, you have it introduced, so now you can,
We have-
perhaps the council would like to start making amendments to version C and looking at version C, that's the subcommittee, as directed by this body last Monday, directed a subcommittee to meet and to provide clarity and additional conditions in a conditional use permit as appropriate.
Okay. Okay. So, do you like that? I
well,
mean,
to me, that sounds better, because
Yep.
otherwise, you're,
Yep.
that version C just had blanks in it.
right. So why would
And-
we pull it off the table? We're-
Why
Yep.
would we not fill the blanks in?
Very good. Very good. It is. It's, I agree. It's a little screwy, but, so at this point then, we have on the, do we vote then? Or do we start
I think you
discussion
would,
to amend?
I think you would consider a motion to amend it.
But
But we don't, we haven't
that
voted
version
to
is not
proceed.
open. C is not opened on the floor if there's no vote on it, in my opinion.
I think you're right. We gotta get
It's on the table.
and then amend.
It is on the
I
table.
don't think, I guess my point is, I don't know that we can vote on amendments if we've not
Well, we're going to discuss.
voted on the
that.
option of presented before us, version A, B, or C.
Yes.
I guess coming into this tonight, I thought this was an up or down vote on the modifications that had been made from the,
That's where we hope to
subcommittee.
get, Josh. That's where we're trying to get.
And I was
And
kind of under the same impression. If the original C from a week ago had nothing in it, it would seem to me as though we could have the motion to just take it away and get rid of it, in the hopes of then considering
Speak up.
version
Okay.
C modified that we have before us this evening.
It's on the table.
Right.
This is,
Introduce
Dennis,
Speak up, will you?
I think the first motion you need to do is having a motion to remove version C from last meeting from the table.
It is. We had that.
We've done that.
Okay, have you voted on that to get it off the table?
Yes.
Okay, so now you've got that motion out.
No, there's
No, we
no,
haven't.
I don't think you voted.
No, we did
I think
not.
that's the
Oh, we
problem.
didn't.
We haven't
didn't-
voted.
Okay, because
We
we
need to
were.
vote to take that off the table.
Get the vote to take it off the table, then you can amend the motion that, or the version that's on the, off the
But
table.
Councilman Lange's question is, why are you taking off something that's got holes in it?
No,
Because-
my question wasn't, because the motion wasn't to take it off the table.
right.
The motion was was to accept version C. Am I not correct
With
on that?
modifications.
No,
We took it off the table, did we not?
Yes.
Didn't we vote and take it off?
Vote on.
Yes,
We didn't,
we voted. We got it written down.
yeah?
We did?
We voted to take it off the table.
no, we voted to,
I don't think so.
Do we start over?
Voted on the agenda.
Right?
No, we did not. Made a motion to do that, but we didn't vote.
That's when my pen ran out, because I grabbed it from you, because I ran out of pen. Voted, yes, we voted off the
What
table.
was the vote?
To,
Everybody
mean,
voted in
what-
It
favor.
was the one,
to take it off of the table?
Was it unanimous?
no,
I don't think we did.
was not,
Okay.
All right, Clint, help.
Okay.
Did you vote to take it off the table?
Do you have
You wouldn't.
a motion and a second on the table?
Right now?
Yes. Why, what if, I mean, this shouldn't, what if you withdraw the motion and the second that are before you, the first thing? The second thing you do, let's not talk about whether you, if you have a motion then to remove it from the table, even if you've done it again, remove it from the table and take it off the table, and then you've got it there. You've got it off the table, and then you can deal with version C by approving it, by amending it, by doing whatever you want to do with it.
There you go.
Okay, so Resolution 2014-43, which was tabled on the October 20th meeting, we're looking then, we're going to redo taking that resolution off of the table. Is that?
First, get rid of any motions that you had, a motion and a second for whatever got lost here, and I don't know who made those
I
motions.
rescind my motion, my first
I
motion.
rescind the second.
Okay, so now go back, take it off the table.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to take off the table Resolution 2014-43, tabled at the October 20th City Council meeting.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Do I? Okay, we have a motion with a second. Please vote.
Voting in favor of the motion to take off the table, councilpersons Granquist, Langy, Merrill, Murin, Faust, File. Voting against the motion, Councilman Moni. Councilman Clausen abstaining.
All right? Then I would ask for introduction to entertain either A, B, or C of the resolution. Right? That's what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay.
Your Honor, I would move we consider version C that we have before us in our packets tonight marked modified for discussion.
Do I have a second to that?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion with a second to accept Resolution C with a modified version that appears in the packet dated 10/28/14.
So what you, may I?
Please.
What you're doing is you're saying, we're going to take the blank one, we're going to substitute what was the blank in there with the modified version that's in there. Yeah, and you're only going to be voting to, for purposes of discussion and moving this forward, you're only going to be voting to put those provisions that came from the subcommittee into version C, and then you can deal with it. You're not voting to approve those. You're just voting to make that what's before the council. Yes.
Okay.
I think then at this point, it's probably fair to talk about what modifications were made from the original permit to the
What do you believe
modifications
we
made in
need to-
subcommittee. for the public's sake.
Yep.
And I guess I would initiate that conversation by asking someone to detail what those changes were from
Okay, we
the,
can sure do that, Councilman. But are we okay not to vote to put those in to see?
I think,
He already did, though.
Right.
After the motions, we have.
But are we? We just did. Are we,
yeah.
okay, all
When we
right,
talk about them, though, so we can take them out if we don't.
right,
For discussion.
okay, all right, okay.
I think it's fine to talk about. Do you want?
At this point.
Yeah, do you want to read them in? Do you want to?
How would you best like to do this? Would you like me to read all these into the record? Would that be the best way to start it?
I believe that would be the best
All
way
right.
to start it.
All right, let's do that. All right,
Do you want to just go down to the?
Yep. I'm going to read just the actual conditions that will be a part of the resolution. So, I'm going to start right here. Number 1, the stock car racetrack shall operate only on Saturdays, 6 p.m. until 10:30 p.m. from April 1 through September 15th. Actual operation of race cars may occur until 11 p.m. if there are delays due to race car accidents or weather on Saturday night. There may be one super late model race per year, and 2 Saturday nights per racing season shall be designated as no racing nights, and these dates should be shown on the racing schedule. Racing nights canceled due to inclement weather or other reasons cannot be rescheduled on previous scheduled no racing nights. Number 2 is all access to the stock car racetrack shall be off Grandview Drive. Number 3, all race cars with headers, except for cars participating in the annual SLMR race, shall be equipped with Schoenfeld mufflers, stamped IMC 609, IMCA 930, or IMCA 935. The Norfolk Zoning Administrator may approve other muffler models for utilization so long as they are proven to meet or exceed noise standards of the mufflers listed herein. Public service announcements shall be read every hour, and notices posted to remind drivers and attendees of the dangers of drinking and driving. PSAs shall also remind racers and attendees of proper trash disposal. Adequate security guards shall be provided for crowd control on racing nights. Traffic shall be controlled on the property to ensure safe and orderly ingress and egress. Trash barrels shall be placed at the entrance and the exit of the property on Grandview Drive. All litter on county roads and ditches adjacent to the off-road ranch property shall be cleared up within 24 hours after each race event. Lighting shall be designed to illuminate the racetrack only. Track lights shall be turned off no later than 30 minutes after the last race each Saturday night. Best management practices shall be utilized as needed to provide for dust control, vegetation control, pest control, sediment track out generated by traffic entering or leaving the site. To control track out, a minimum of 24 by 150 feet hard surfacing from the exiting hard surface on Grandview Drive shall be installed at the point of ingress egress to the property. Number 11, the attached site plan is hereby approved and shall be complied with. Number 12, there shall be compliance with any other applicable city, county, state, or federal regulations that may apply, including but not limited to the following: hard surfacing requirements, landscaping requirements, buffer yard requirements, floodplain permitting, and stormwater requirements, including National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Number 13, pursuant to the Norfolk City Code, this permit is for 10 years and is a personal privilege. So, that being read into, we can have discussion here. Certainly, if you want to start here, I will give Ms. Rocky the opportunity to come forward and speak to, if any questions or concerns of those. Any in particular as far as this point, council, that you have questions of or might want to?
I guess I would ask someone, staff or whoever, to outline what modifications were made in subcommittee versus what was before us last Monday.
Well, yeah, we'll turn to Clint here, and he can certainly go through that.
I'll take a shot at that. The first one is that in number 1, that's the one that talks about the operation between Saturdays 6 p.m. to 10:30. We took out something that talked about reasonable delays for accidents and weather, and said if there are delays due to accidents or weather, notwithstanding that, the operation of race cars can not go beyond 11 o'clock. So that was one change in item number 1.
Was the change in that from 10:30 to 11? Is that what changed the hours of operation?
No, the 6 to 10:30 is the same. It talked about if there was a weather delay or something, or some big accident or whatever that would delay things. The prior language said reasonable delays. This now says, this provision would now say that it could occur until 11 o'clock if there were delays. But at 11 o'clock, the racing stops. So if there was some particular problem, what that says is that they would have to merely modify their program if they wanted to get on to their bigger races or do whatever. Okay. The second change in there, and if other folks, council people or staff were there want to correct me, that's okay for me. We tried to clarify with the last language in there, that if there were nights that were canceled due to inclement weather, they couldn't be rescheduled for a previously scheduled no racing night. Okay, so those were clear. I think that's the only thing that was in paragraph 1 that changed.
So those two nights that the neighborhood wanted held
Scheduled
sacred
off.
are penciled off, and they remain penciled off whether there's inclement weather or not.
No, that's correct. The other thing,
Do you have a question?
Well, I just have a question about those 2 nights. Scheduled off, when can we maybe introduce amendments to that, or say those scheduled days off might have to be between certain months? What I'm getting at is, they could put that.
Okay.
it'd be a lot easier to keep
All
track
right.
of things.
When do we get to that? Or maybe I'm asking too early.
No, you're asking probably what everybody's going to be thinking, Councilman, but I think, looking at the gentleman here to my left, he suggests we get through what's here first and then go back to amend what,
Whatever you want to do.
okay?
Okay, the other thing that we did is, we tried to kind of organize some of these things. We made, what was number 3, maybe number 7 now, or vice versa, tried to organize some of those things to make it a little clearer. I don't know if we succeeded or not, maybe not, but the second one, I don't think that's changed. It says access to the stock car racetrack shall be off of Grandview Drive. I don't think there were any changes with that. The third one had to do with the mufflers. There were some changes there. What we changed is, it talked about saying that instead of saying there were 3 ICMA approved mufflers, what we did is we put in what we understand to be the 3 ICMA mufflers. Those were the Schoenfeld mufflers that were stamped in with the numbers that appear there, IMCA 609, IMCA 930, IMCA 935 respectively. And then, considering that there may be advances in regard to that going forward, we put in and added this language that said the Norfolk zoning administrator would have the ability to approve other muffler models to be utilized, so long as those other muffler models meet or exceed the noise standards of the 3 mufflers that are listed in this paragraph. So, if something new and better comes along, Trent, in his position, could say, hey, this is better, it does a better job, and it could be allowed as well. okay? We put that in there in an effort not to have to change this if it were to ever be enacted, simply to get a new muffler. So that's number 3. Number 4, it has to do with public service announcements being read. That was left unchanged. Number 5, it talks about adequate security guards shall be provided for crowd control on racing nights.
That's an addition, is it not?
Yes.
That was an addition.
Number 6, we may have changed the verbiage, but that's about it. I think it reads better the way it is now, that says traffic shall be controlled on the property to ensure safe and orderly ingress and egress. Same sentiment that was in there before, but that's changed. Number 8 is different. Number 7. Number 7 is the same. Trash barrels shall be placed at the entrance to the exit of the property on Grandview Drive. And that's the same, as I recall. Number 8 is different. Number 8 right now is in this amendment that would be before you for your consideration would say, all litter on county roads and ditches adjacent to the off-road ranch property shall be cleaned up within 24 hours after each race event. So basically what this says is the county roads and ditches would need to be patrolled as a result of this if this were to be approved. That's different than what was there before. Previously, it said that all of the property within 100 feet of the boundary of the off-road ranch property would need to be litter patrolled. The problem with that is that would in effect require the off-road ranch people to go onto the 100 feet would take you onto other people's property. And those other people may not want you there. So that's been changed. This is different than what was there before. It's removed the 100-foot requirement from the perimeter and said patrol the roads. So that's number 8. Number 9, that was a clarification in 2 regards. We changed the language a little bit to just make it clear that lighting shall be designed to illuminate the racetrack only. The other language, there were some of the staff that thought it suggested that the illumination had to come from outside the racetrack. This doesn't say where the lighting would be. I think it's on the site plan, but I could stand to be corrected with that. Dennis?
There are some light standard locations shown on the site plan. You are correct.
And then the other thing that was there is there was talking about the track lights would be turned off no later than 30 minutes after the last race each Saturday night. That was an effort to address the concerns about, do people need to leave there? Do they whatever? The track lights need to go off. If there's other auxiliary lighting around restrooms or in the pit area or whatever, those could be allowed to be stayed under, would be present here under that. So that's number 9. Number 10, talked about best management practices shall be utilized as needed to provide for dust control, vegetation control, pest control, sediment track out generated by traffic leaving or entering the site. And then to control the track out, there was a requirement of a 24 by 150 foot hard surfacing to the area where ingress and egress comes to Grandview Drive. I think we did change that to add vegetation control and pest control to the litany of best management practices, if I recall correctly. I think that's the only change that was in that section. Number 11, the old, this talks about, paragraph 11 talks about the attached site plan. And what happens is that this replaces the other language. The other language, you remember, was at the Planning Commission, and that language said something to the effect of this site plan is approved, subject to the modification of turning it counterclockwise or to the northwest 15 degrees and removing some trees that were on it. That's been wiped out, and it says the attached site plan, one which is approved and shall be complied with. So that's what was in the agenda packet. That's what's laying outside there. And I don't know if we've got the ability to put those up here or not.
We do if you want them.
Well, so that the public's aware that you have the ability to put them up where they're, if it's so desired. So that's what we've done there. Basically, what happened with that is when the meeting was held a week ago Monday, there was some concern expressed by the elected officials about some of the provisions in the site plans or some of the things that were not there. One of the things that came out of the subcommittee meeting was, in effect, the elected officials that were part of that subcommittee saying, we want this, this, and this on the, we want these changes made to the site plan, and so that was communicated to the folks that had the site plan, to the applicant that had the site plan on their computer or whatever, and those changes were made and reviewed, and that's what would be before the council for consideration if you would approve the motion and second that's before you. Paragraph 12. This doesn't really change anything. It's an effort at making it clear. There shall be compliance with any other applicable city, county, state, or federal regulations that were applicable or something like that. We added this. We added language that said, which include but are not limited to the following, and then listed. There are hard surfacing requirements in the city code that would need to be complied with. There are landscaping requirements in the city code that in this application would require trees. I think that when you look at it, Trent, help me, 1 every 50 foot.
Yes, Clint. On this, for I-1, they have a 10-foot required landscaping, and it's, city code requires a 2-inch caliper tree for every 500 square feet. So that equates out to 1 tree per 50 foot.
And so that is a requirement under the landscaping requirements of the Norfolk City Code that are present here with.
Sorry, and Trent, where is that buffer? I mean, where is that to be located within the property?
That's
That
on the
landscaping?
street side,
Okay.
or Old Highway 8.
So, and that's there without going through if this were approved, that would be present there simply because it's in the code, even though no one would read that in the conditional use permit that would be before the council for consideration. Similarly, there's some, if their buffer yard requirements are applicable, those would need to be complied with. Floodplain permitting, my understanding is that this property where the conditional use permit is being sought is in a floodplain area, so there needs to be a permit from, is it DEQ that comes in order to do that, or does that come from you, Trent?
We have floodplain requirements, city of Norfolk, so we have permitting that comes through us.
That relates to dirt moving and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
There's stormwater requirements, including the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. We just went through and listed some of those that we thought are most apt to be applicable to this. Anything else that's out there needs to be complied with, like, it doesn't say anything here, for instance, that says that you need to have a building permit if you build a structure on the site. You have to have a building permit. We didn't put that here, but that's another kind of a thing that we could have put there. So those are the kinds of things that are talked about in paragraph 12. Really doesn't change anything, but just is there to show that those other things are there. The last one, number 13, is saying that the permit is for 10 years, a personal privilege. That's unchanged from the way it was from the Planning Commission, if I remember correctly. And that's the end of the 13 items that are listed in the permit in version C.
Okay.
I had written down some of the things that we talked about which are addressed here. The only one thing that I have written down that I don't know if we have to do or if we need to put it in here or if it just happens, are we going to contact Stanton County, tell them what we have done, suggest some things like they may need to maintenance the road, they may need some additional law enforcement because of some acts that we are doing? Do we notify them, or is that the TRAC's responsibility, or should we put it in here to make it somebody's responsibility? You know, just to be a good neighbor with them and say, hey, we passed this, you're gonna need a little more help some nights.
I guess I'll try to answer that, Councilman. It's not necessarily our position as a community to tell Stanton County or any other county or any other public entity what they need or do or do not have to do because of the action we've taken. I will say that our friends in Stanton County are aware of this situation. They've been here. Obviously, they testified in front of the mayor and council last Monday, and they understand. I'm sure there's many eyes on this. They understand that whatever action you take tonight may or may not affect them. So it's really as it is your responsibility to maintain the roads in the city of Norfolk, it's their responsibility to maintain the roads in Stanton County as it is in any other county for the commissioners. And the law enforcement issues are the same. Responsibilities are clearly divided and clearly identified who's responsible for those things, and this changes nothing.
And I didn't mean to say, tell them what to do, but make them aware of some things that we have done so they could maybe prepare with their budget or something, is all I meant.
Sure, I mean, I guess if the council wants us to further tell them, to notify the Stanton County Commissioners that this action, whatever action you decide to take tonight has taken place, we sure can do that.
Well, and I think certainly, I don't know that that needs to be a part of the conditional use permit, but I think we could take that upon ourselves to make sure that we have conversation. In fact, I just had a little conversation with the mayor over there at our last little event, and we certainly are going to be in contact, so.
Sure, absolutely, we can go that
Yeah.
extra mile and do that as, if the mayor and council wants
Yep.
staff to do that, or if the elected officials want to do that on their own accord. But as
We're
far
gonna
as-
come up
I
with-
agree with you, Mayor, as far as putting this in a conditional use permit, to place that on an applicant
Right.
would be inappropriate.
Right. So would we be best to, now that you've heard what has been, do we go ahead and vote on that? And then if you want to amend some of these, or if you have further question of them, are there any that, you know, I mean, we can certainly carry on further conversation, but I think the question is this what we are going to want to consider as far as plugging in the conditions? I am truly confused where we are. Do we have anything on the table right now? Do we have a motion to, yeah, okay. Modified version that appeared in the packet is what we have. Motion with a second to approve the modified version.
That would be the conditions that you read
Right.
and the ones that we've subsequently discussed after Josh raised his question about what was changed.
Okay.
And
Okay, but would this be the right time to vote on that and then go forward to further discuss these if there's more changes that you want made?
If we're to vote on what's in front of us with the modifications, I still have some questions about what's in here. I mean, number one, and one thing I don't think we talked about much last week was there may be one super late model race per year. I don't know what that means, and I welcome anyone who does. I think we want to be clear for the record what we're voting on here, so.
I think there's probably lots of folks in the room that could probably speak to that, maybe one of the racers in particular, but I will say this, the super late model race was
Shane, use the mic too. I have a hard time
The
hearing.
super late model race was identified when we had a subcommittee meeting where we had a joint subcommittee meeting between the planning commission subcommittee, city council subcommittee, the supporters and the opposition, and their representatives were at that subcommittee meeting, and that was identified as a potential and discussed in detail at that subcommittee meeting. But as far as clarity of what actually a super late model race is, perhaps there's someone with a lot more expertise than your city administrator could tell the council what that is.
It was my understanding, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that basically the difference with the SLMR is that it would be run without the mufflers.
That is the difference. It was discussed at that subcommittee, absolutely, Councilman, and that was the difference.
I mean, as far as how many laps it is or how many heats there are or any of that, I don't think that was discussed. The important part was the fact that there were going to be no mufflers on the race cars.
Louder than.
And they would, one night would be louder than the rest.
Yes.
And they would still have to live under the guidance of item number one, as far as times of the race and all that kind of thing.
So that's the difference for that night, the entire night, that's no mufflers that
That one
night.
race where it's a
One
special.
race?
Where it's a specialty night,
Or
a
one night.
specialty race.
Okay.
I don't know if it's one actual race or a series of race, but it's just one night.
One
race
race
night.
night. Thank you.
That's what it says.
Okay. Clarification, does that help? Okay, okay.
and while we're at it, I mean, we talk about the mufflers, the 3 options for mufflers which have been identified. I think last week we talked a little bit about what those mufflers allow in terms of decibel levels, and I think that was 95 max, if I'm, is that right? That's,
95 or 90?
I guess my point is, I don't think we understand what the, at least I don't understand how loud this is gonna be when you have up to 20 cars racing at one time.
I wish I could answer that for you. We all know and we've all acknowledged it's going to be noisy. It's going to be loud. The effort to do the very best that we can to control something that is going to be there is for us to insist that this group, to come to the city of Norfolk to race, will have these mufflers that, I'm not very good at speaking this probably, but there's an organization out there that recommends these. And so that's the reason those 3 were listed. And I do believe there was some sort of number that was within those specifications. I don't want to tell you that it was 95, Josh, I'm not sure. But
It was 98, Mayor, in my memory anyway, is what I remember. That's 1 car measured at 1 car. 95.
Right, right. So again, there's no way that we're going to be able to control the noise at the level that we'd all like it to be controlled and still allow cars to race. But I believe that we are doing our darndest, our best, to be able to come up with, and guys, I believe, I've listened to so many of these racers out here that are all about helping to make this the best and put in their effort in trying to come up with allowing them still to have the ability to race and improve, do whatever they can. Like I say, Josh, will we ever be able to say we're going to be able to control the noise? I don't think so, not at least in the near future. And when we go forward, we're going to realize that we're going to hear 18 Saturday nights, cars racing. I just don't think we can stop it. So,
Yeah, I understand that, but to the point of some of the neighbors, I think that's their concern. We know there's going to be noise. I think we
yes.
don't have any way of gauging how much and what that impact is on neighbors and what the impact is on livestock and what possibly besides the mufflers may be done to help mitigate some of those things. So that's my.
Well, and okay. If you want to come up and speak to that, please do. I need you to come in and, sorry, you in the gray, you're next.
I am Doug Hutman, and I used to reside out on Sherwood Road,
Okay,
which was about a quarter mile from Riviera Raceway. I own not quite 40 acres out there, and I had cows. And to this day, there's still cows and a horse out there. They don't get out. I don't know. I lived there for 10 years. I now live out on Highway 24, which will be about 3 miles from the track. I never noticed any difference. I knew it was Saturday night when I heard the noise. So I guess that's the only clarification I'm going to say is when I lived there, I knew what day of the week it was. It's Saturday night, it's race night. You can look down there, you can see lights, no different than looking down at Memorial Park and seeing football lights on down there. I guess that's what I want to put into this.
okay. Will you, yeah, thanks, Doug. Appreciate that.
Mayor and City Council, I was going to read the IMCA rules, and I think some of you guys are probably itching back there for me to read them, but this is the IMCA rule, and this is where we got that language for that on the exhaust system. And it states that Schoenfeld muffler stamped IMCA IMCA 930, IMCA 935 must be used if track has a noise reduction rule of 98 decibels or more. So
Say that
each-
again. What?
Okay. Each of those three
Right.
mufflers that we had pointed out.
Yes.
Must be used if the track has a noise reduction rule of 98 decibels or more. So each individual muffler, I mean, I could probably get on Schoenfeld's website and find what they are, but the rules are just saying that if we have a noise reduction of 98 or more for this track, then these three mufflers have to be used to meet that.
Thank you.
So to break them out, which, if one's 95.5 and another one's 96, I don't have that information.
But we've not necessarily written that rule into the use permit. We've just mandated the use of the mufflers. Is that accurate?
Correct. Okay. Any other?
Well, one of the things that I know came up last Monday, or at least a point of clarification, and I don't know if, number one, it adequately addresses it or not. I mean, it says, the stock car race shall operate only on Saturdays. What's the definition of operation? Again, is it gonna allow practice out there? Is it gonna, I don't know that this is clear enough to.
Can you help us, Jim? How would you like to see it read? Because truly, that's been the intent. But if we're leaving doubt.
So
we-
if the intent is that if there's practice out there, that's a violation.
Prior to
Is that
6
correct?
o'clock.
That's my understanding, absolutely, that was described.
Okay,
Yes.
so,
When you read it, Councilman, it says actual operation of the race cars. So when I read that, I think that means the actual operation of the race car.
And I believe that
Whether that's
was,
a practice or a race, they're still operating. So then it squeezes you into the time frame. So,
well, I
yes,
guess.
to answer your question directly, I think that's a violation.
That being understood then it also needs to be understood going out here that if that happens, that is a violation, and this conditional use permit could go away. Even if all the work happens, everything gets prepared, and come opening day is April 1, and May 1, it's not a Saturday, and somebody decides to go out there and run, which it happened at the other place. I will guarantee you that, because I knew on Monday nights and Tuesday nights when I was working a little later and I heard racers running around out there. If that happens, is it a violation? And is it a violation that could
read it
lead
again,
to
Shane,
the
would you?
termination of the conditional use permit?
I think you're absolutely right, Councilman. It would be a violation. We would handle that on a complaint basis, obviously. If we got a complaint from the neighborhood, which I assume there's going to be many eyes and ears on this project if it does get approved, then we collect those complaints for the staff, we investigate them, and we can issue citations. We can call the permit into question in front of the planning commission. It can be reviewed. All and above are available to the public body to review the conditional use permit. And the owner or the applicant should know that, and I think that's been articulated clearly to him through staff and elected officials in the subcommittee process, and now again here tonight. I can read it again, Mayor. Number 1 says the stock car race track shall operate only on Saturdays, 6 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. from April 1st through September 15th. Actual operation of the race cars may occur until 11 p.m. if there are delays due to race car accidents or weather on Saturday night. Only till 11 p.m., that's saying. So
Right.
if you want clarity in that, Councilman or Council, if you have the felicity of phrase to give more clarity, you have that option available.
You want to offer?
Well, and I don't know that you're gonna be able to write clarity into it, but I think the neighbors, at least from this presentation here, then have the expectation that they should not be hearing somebody out there you know, and that if they do hear it, that it is a point where they should be able to call up and make the complaint then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a suggestion here.
The mayor and I have been writing here while you've been talking, Jim. One of the things which might be a clarification for you to consider would be to take paragraph 1 or item number 1 and say, add to the end of it this: no race cars shall be present or operated on the racetrack except during the specific times authorized in this paragraph.
I would like to see that added, because I
would
think it
too.
adds clarity to it.
Yep.
Because I think
Yep.
otherwise it's too open-ended. And
Well,
it's
good
gonna be
point.
open to interpretation then.
Shall operate, yep.
Point of order, Mayor.
Sir.
Just for clarity there, council, would you, when you have those kind of suggestions as we move forward through the CUP language tonight, would you like to vote on each one of those so we have a clear record of exactly what you're adding and/or if you deleted something? Clint, I guess I'll defer to your opinion on that, but it sure seems like it'd produce a clean record for your staff to proceed with developing it as you would like it to see done.
Can I respond?
Please.
The mayor said I could respond. Shane, I think that's a wonderful idea to do that, any of those that the council wants to consider do that. I would merely note, though, that until we deal with the motion and the second of putting these in there, we're premature to deal with amendments to the amendments. We gotta deal with the other one that's already on the floor before we could do that.
Understood, yeah, otherwise we're gonna get ahead of ourselves here and we're gonna not have clarity again.
Best fingers are going pretty good over here, though, Jane, so. Okay. Very good. Other concerns, other questions, other comments?
Well, I would say that taking this back to the subcommittee was an effort to, I would say, plug some holes in perceived holes in the site plan. And I think that certainly number 1 got some of that accomplished. It's, you know, most entertainment things that go on around this community cause noise. If they're football games or baseball games or concerts at wherever they may have them, or race car events, they all make noise. Some will make more noise than others. But number 1 was certainly put in an effort to control the noise and put it in the conditional use permit for the noise aspect. Another thing was public safety, and number 5, we hope to address that by having adequate security at all of these things, should this pass. And that, once again, is to protect the conditional use permit. If adequate security is not provided, then there's a real problem. There's certainly room for complaint, so. Number 9, we wanted to make an effort to just control the amount of light that's out there. When you turn the lights out, people have a tendency to go home. So these things were added in an effort to hopefully find some common ground between the two parties and see if we could bring them a little bit closer together. As far as adding anything to this, I think we need to have further discussion on just what is in the modification, and then if we do want to make that particular addition to it, I think, as Clint said, I think we can add that after we're done dealing with C as modified in the packet.
To that point, the conditional use permit references that the attached site plan is hereby approved and shall be complied with. Now, the site plan we're looking at tonight is different than the site plan that was in front of us last week,
Yes.
correct?
Right.
I think for the public's benefit, if it is possible, it'd be nice to get those up here.
I just want to add to what Rob said. Big Bang Boom is a good example. I live across the street from Big Bang Boom, and I'll guarantee you it's as loud as a stock car when he gets going there. So there are other things in the community. This is not an isolated event, although it will be 18 times rather than one time a year, you know. But we have the concerts over at the park, and we have other things. So there are other things that do make noise, some of them not quite as loud, not 18 weeks. So we do try and follow the same rules with security, try and
Yeah.
keep the noise down, things like that, put time limits on it. So I just want to make that statement.
Okay, do we have them pulled up? Yes.
You know, I would say, Dave, there's a lot of ways to count these. I mean, you could count how many football games there are, you could count how many concerts there are around the community. When you start adding all of these up and you balance them against some of these other things that are going on, they're all events. And
Well, and gentlemen, you make very good points, and certainly I think the one thing that I think about so often is how diverse this community is. Each of us have things that we enjoy and time that we want to spend with our family in different ways. And certainly, I got to tell you, I haven't been to the racetrack Riviera since John Day and Associates sponsored Lyle Wyrick. So how many years ago was that? But when I was out there, it was a good time. And certainly, you know, I guess I was young and crazy and I didn't know what, and to me, the noise was the fun part of it. And I'm sure that's probably true for some of the other young kids. So again, I just think that's the important piece that we have to remember here. We all have different likes, but it is a community of folks that we are here to serve. So, and with that, if there's questions on what's before you, as far as the site plan,
We should probably step through, there's multiple pages to that site plan. What's shown here is just a general layout over an aerial, just kind of to show where the racetrack is with respect to the property. This line across here is the old Highway 8, you can kind of see my cursor moving. Grandview is over here on the far left side of the drawing. But that just kind of shows where the layout is. Probably one of the things that's more pronounced on this one than what we had before is it shows that the exit to and from the racetrack facility will be to the south of the area for the campers. This horseshoe loop in here is the camper sites, both sides of the road. This is the same drawing, just the aerial photograph has been removed. It just kind of helps so you can kind of see some clarification on some of the items there. This is a close-up of the track itself. Across the bottom, you can see kind of a profile of how it's going to look. The outer banks of the are about 10 feet above existing grade. It's overall about 580 feet long. Across the left side, you're seeing a cross-section through the other direction. Along the straightaways, the banking is about 5 feet high. There's a 3-foot retaining wall with an 8-foot chain link fence on top of it along the west side of the track in front of the bleachers. Bleachers are about 8 feet high. There's a upper concourse. It appears that this is designed to be a top-load facility. There's restrooms and concessions and a announcer stand up on the top of that area. And then it slopes back down to the natural ground behind that. Ramp on the left there for access up onto the concourse that meets ADA requirements. Some light standards in the center of the track for lighting the track, and then there's a couple of light standards back behind the concessions area as well. And then this is just a close-up of the actual grandstand concession area a little bit there. So those are the 4 drawings that make up what is included in the conditional use permit. There's also a sheet that will be added that says that these drawings have been reduced for filing purposes. When you file this stuff in the courthouses, they want 8.5 by 11. There's a note that says they've been reduced for filing purposes. If you want to see the original sites, they'll be available at the city clerk's office. So I would answer any questions that any of you folks may have about any of these site drawings, or we can go back and talk about details on any one.
Besides the entrances and exits you mentioned, Dennis, were there significant changes from this, from the original plan to this plan?
I would say there aren't significant changes. What we got was we got some cross-section so you could see some relief up and down as opposed to just looking at a flat picture. I don't believe that they changed any of those things. The light standards on the site plan that you had a week ago, thereabouts, were also in the same locations they are now. I don't think the track dimensions changed. We just kind of took and pulled some various pieces off of this general oversight and kind of blew them up so that you could see a little bit better detail.
Just a question about berms. We were told last week that berms would be a major source for sound barrier. Are dimensions of those berms specified on this plan?
If you look at this side elevation here, that's in the upper left-hand corner, you've got about 5 feet of rise across the track, which is 60 feet wide, roughly there. There's a 3-foot jump where the barrier wall is. The bleachers then from that 3-foot front concourse rise another 8 feet to the concourse level, upper concourse level. And then the announcer stand is another 18 feet high. I would be my belief that the restrooms and the concession areas are probably not that full 18 feet high. It appears that there's probably a roof line about right there. So they'd probably be in that 10, 12 feet high.
That's one side of the track, right?
Right. The other,
And do a little further clarification, that the actual length of that then is considered the 343, 344? The way I read the drawing anyway, or does it stop short of that? I mean, is the barrier wall the entire 344 foot long?
as I look at this drawing, and the applicant that drew it will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I would believe that that retaining wall would be the 340-some feet long. And then the bleachers obviously are not that long. And
Because bleachers are only 140 foot long from what I'm reading.
that,
Next page.
okay. Yeah, and I guess I'm envisioning with that ADA ramp coming up from the, maybe Mr. Jensen can explain exactly what, how that's gonna
Yes,
shape into that.
I helped design the site plan. The question of the wall you're asking about is 343 feet long. It'll be 3 foot above the track surface. And then it'll go up to there to the bleachers. The bleachers are 140 foot long. There's 4 sections. There's 12 rows of bleachers that are 32 foot long each section. And the total capacity will be 1,008 people, average an 18-inch seat, of course. And behind that will be the concessions and the restrooms. The building for the concessions is 10 foot tall in the front. And then in the middle section, the 20-foot section will be 18 foot tall, as for the announcer's booth will be above the concessions area.
And I'll play devil's advocate a little bit for you on that then.
Yep.
Then for the other 100 foot on either side of the bleachers, what do we have?
There will be a berm built that, not necessarily shown on the site plan, but it's going to be the 343 feet long. That will be the elevation of the top concourse.
Okay, so it'll be the elevation of, I can't read.
It'll be
that.
the same elevation as the top concourse will be, which will be 8 foot above.
It'll be this elevation.
What
That
will-
is, yes, that is correct.
all the way around the track?
No, just on be on what I would consider the west side of the track.
So the rest of the track, the elevation will be the same as,
If you go to the other picture for the other elevations on the ends of it, the banking will 0, and then of course the top of the banking is 10 feet on both corners. If you follow that. As you can see on that picture there.
The picture on either the right or the left side, you're gonna see a 10-foot dimension.
The bottom of the page shows the elevation of what the berms will be, the banking of the track, basically. And that will be 10 foot on the highest part of the banking. On the backside, they will slope away so that if cars go over, they can safely stop and continue on without damaging the car or any property there. You follow that?
I guess, vegetation, because that was added in here, is that required on the top of those berms then, according to code at all? Trees or, and, you know, there's been concerns about erosion of the berms. What's that?
They will have to maintenance this all the time and pack the dirt, so that will never go away.
What would you like to, I mean, what do
No,
you?
no, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
What
I
what
would
do the
think it'd
top of the
be,
berms look like? I mean, how's that?
The top of the berm will be obviously a racing surface, so there will be no trees on the top of the track, on that 10-foot berm, there will be no trees there. Because that's where our safety zone to get away
Okay.
off the track.
Good.
Right.
I'm guessing that if they put trees, they'll be along the fence line of that end there, which is Old Highway 8. Any more questions?
You said trees, but trees and grass?
I,
Don't know.
I'm assuming it'll all be grassed, that's not on the raised surface. I mean, that just helps for the dust control. I mean, that's just natural.
Is that what would be required, do you think? Backside of the berms would have to be fenced?
I would think so. I mean, I've been to a few racetracks and most of them have grass on
Yes.
that backside, you know, to the best of their ability. And then, you know, obviously, once you get down off from that berm, then that'll be grass there.
Yes.
One of the things that's included as a part of that package C, when you pulled it all in, was the notes in response to points brought up in the appeal. And number D of that says that those berms will be sloped out at a 4-to-1 ratio. These will be covered by grass to prevent erosion. And during construction, they will place the appropriate barriers to comply with the stormwater permitting.
Also, one other thing
Thank you.
is that the berm that I was discussing where the end of the bleachers will be extended out, that will also be seeded down with grass. Thank you.
okay, okay. Thank you. All right. Council, are we ready to vote on just the, what we brought out as far as, how have we been referring to this? The modified version of the conditions?
Nope. No,
Okay. What would you like to do, Councilman Mayor?
Trent, I got a question for you. What is the process for filing a claim on a conditional use permit?
For filing a complaint?
Yeah, I said
Or-
claim. a
Yeah, I was
complaint.
like, claim. Yeah, a complaint, that can come to us by many ways. And we do get, I guess most of our complaints aren't on the conditional use permits. We've had a few, probably a handful, over the quite a few years. And Scott could probably talk to more so all the years that he did. I think he probably only had a handful as well, but that can come to us by phone, by letter, you know, email, obviously. And we would look into that, just like we do any complaint, and then move on it. And we have several options with those. We can cite, as Shane was talking earlier, we can pull up that conditional use permit, as Councilman Lange was even And it can be called into question if they're violating rules that we feel that we need to pull the whole thing back into question. So,
Thank you.
And Trent, the duration of these conditional use permits, is it typically a 10-year span? There was talk last week of 5 years versus 10 years. What's the standard practice for these?
I would say most of the time, standard is 10 years, for the most part. Do we probably have some out there that are 5? I don't know. You remember, Dennis, which ones are at 5? I don't know.
Some are 5, very few that I, in my memory. Some are perpetual, go with the land, go with, the personal privilege that this one did.
The way I look at all of them, though, Councilman, is that if we do have a problem in the first year, just because it says 10 years, we're gonna deal with it in the first year. I mean, that's the way I kind of look at that. I think the biggest thing for anybody applying for a conditional use permit is that they want a little bit of time. If they're gonna dump $500,000 or 10,000 into a project, depending on what the project is, they want a little bit of maybe assurance, so to speak, that I'm not gonna dump 10,000 or $500,000 into something and have it go away in 1 year. So I think that's where a lot of that comes in.
And if we do issue a ticket or a fine, how much is that generally? Is that set, or is it according to the violation?
Councilman, that can go up to usually up to $500 per citation,
Okay.
per day.
Like picking up garbage compared to noise violation?
Yeah, there's really no,
No
and Clint, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's really a difference if violation 1 or violation 8, it can be cited up to 500.
Any of these conditions that would be placed, if you should approve that, any of those they're like a city code requirement, like the things that we find in the city code apply to all of us, like all of us have to stop at a stop sign. The things that you put in the conditional use permit for either this applicant or anybody else, it's like their own private city code. If they violate those things, you can either get a ticket for them, which Trent's right, $0 to $500 is the potential penalty, or either the planning commission, the city council, or the code official, Trent's job as the zoning official, has the ability to say enough already and can bring the conditional use permit up for a review.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we? Yeah,
I just have one more question on that same account. Up to $500, but who or how was that amount decided, I guess?
If there was a violation, that the code staff would determine that they're gonna cite them for that, in effect, give them a ticket, that would get filed in the county court in Madison, and the county court judge would deal with the particular infraction and would set the fine.
Clint?
I'd make
Point
a
of
correction, we'd file that
clarification.
in Stanton County.
Stanton County, what did I say?
Madison, you're just used to saying
I'm wrong.
Madison.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're right across the line there. Grandview Drive is the county line, so we would be filing that in Stanton County.
I'd like to say I was just seeing if you guys were listening, but that
I'm
wouldn't be
listening.
true.
yes, you are.
Who would be responsible then for ensuring that the correct mufflers are equipped on the vehicles?
Those mufflers are specific, 3 different models that are allowed, and that's going to be up to certainly the track folks, but at any time, I mean, there's no reason that we can't go out there and verify that in fact those mufflers are on those cars. That's going to be, I mean, that's part of the deal. I really believe that, they realize, should there be a violation there, they could be in violation, whether they're cited or whether that permit then comes back before this board or the planning commission.
Mayor and council, I'm not a racer, but I think I can speak to this a little bit. They do go off in points. And points are a big thing to the racers, obviously, I believe so. And they do have track officials, and if you get, if you win that race, then your car is actually inspected again. I believe it's inspected before and after the races. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, guys, but okay.
1-4, what's that mean? Top four. Sorry.
Top four, there you go.
Okay, all right,
To clarify this, we are going to be IMCA sanctioned if this goes through.
right.
And we get our night. We will have an IMCA inspector there every night that inspects the cars. They will be a certified inspector. They'll have to go through a certification from IMCA. And obviously with the muffler issue, that will be one of their biggest things they will look at every night. And they will probably, the first night out before we even start racing, he will probably pre-trip or pre-check everybody to make sure that we are within standards of this. So I don't see it as being a big problem. Like I said, we do have a certified inspector that will look at these, so. And you're sure welcome to come out and check them out anytime you want.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are we ready to move forward to vote on where we are with the process thus far? We have a motion with this second, right? Are we ready to vote? And then if there are amendments to be made, we can go forward with those. All right, so I'm going to call the question and ask you, please vote.
A little clarification, that exactly, we are voting on what now?
You are voting on Resolution C, the modified version. Nothing more.
You're not voting to approve that. You're voting to substitute the modified version into
Right.
the version C that was tabled with blanks in it at last week's meeting.
Thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for.
All right.
Council members voting in favor of version C modified version, councilpersons Granquist, Langy, Merrill, Murin, Faust, File. Voting against the motion, Moaning. Abstaining, Councilman Clausen. Motion carries.
All right. Now, at the request of our city administrator, and in order to keep things clear here, there is wording that we talked of as far as to condition number 1. Let's reread that complete condition with the change. Okay?
I got it here.
The possible amendment that we had talked about in regard to item 1 reads as follows. No race cars shall be present or operated on the racetrack except during the specific times authorized in this paragraph. And I think it was contemplated that we just add that on to the end of paragraph 1, item 1.
I make a motion, we add that to paragraph 1.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to add what was read in to paragraph 1. If you would please vote. Item 2, is there anything? Yep, right.
All council members voting in the affirmative, Councilman Clausen abstaining. Motion carries.
Okay, item 2, we're all okay with. Item 3, all race cars with headers, except for cars participating in, shall be equipped with. I don't know if there was any changes to that. I don't believe so. Okay. Looking at number 4, public service announcements shall be read every hour and notices posted to remind drivers and attendees of dangers of drinking and driving. The SA shall also remind racers and attendees of proper trash disposal. I don't remember any changes there. Next, adequate security guards shall be provided for crowd control on racing nights. Next was traffic shall be controlled on the property to ensure safe and orderly ingress and egress. Trash barrels placed at the entrance and the exit of the property on Grandview Drive. Number 8, all litter on county roads and ditches adjacent to the off-road property shall be cleaned up within 24 hours after each race event. Lighting shall be designed to illuminate the racetrack only. Track lighting shall be turned off no later than 30 minutes after the last race each Saturday night. Best management practices shall be utilized as needed to provide for dust control, vegetation control, pest control, sediment track out generated by traffic entering or leaving the site. To control track out, a minimum of 24 by 150 feet of hard surfacing from the exiting hard surface on Grandview Drive shall be installed at the point of ingress and egress to the property. The attached site plan is hereby approved and shall be complied with. There shall be compliance with any other applicable city, county, state, or federal regulations that may apply, including, but not limited to, the following: hard surfacing requirements, landscaping requirements, buffer yard requirements, floodplain permitting, and stormwater requirements, including national pollutant discharge elimination system. And finally, pursuant to Norfolk City Code, this permit is for 10 years and is a personal privilege. In other words, if Signers were to sell, it would not pass on to anyone else. It would go away. So, did I miss anything?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Councilman
I was just gonna
Grandquist,
bring it up, so,
I gave you, got some language if you'd like to hear it.
for my issue I brought up earlier, yes, I
Right.
agree.
Ah, sorry.
What I had scribbled down here,
Do you want to let Corey talk about what he talked about? Do you want
Well,
to?
yes, I can. I had an email with a concern, and obviously we've had many emails for and against the track, including phone calls, but one of them brought up a good point about the 2 Saturday nights off. And I take it in a way of ensuring that we don't just add those 2 at the beginning or add those 2 at the end, that they're somewhere, I guess, in the middle. So
You want to hear Clint's
I
suggestion?
would like some clarification, and maybe we could add a provision in there or an amendment in there for that.
I think a way for you to do that, Councilman, would be to go in there in paragraph 1. It says 2 Saturday nights per racing season shall be designated as no racing nights. Then insert something like this. These non-racing nights shall be scheduled during the months of, put in whatever you want, June, July, August, January, February, March, April, May, June, whatever date you want.
You have a comment, sir?
Theoretically, in the past, over the past, 10, 15 years?
I got to have you come forward, will you please? State your name and,
My name's Dean Reeves. In the past 10 to 15 years, the Hosleys have always recognized the Madison County Fair and have always taken that Saturday night off. So that could be listed as one of the Saturday nights if you guys want one night free. You know, that's just the way they've done it for a long time.
does that,
I
usually
like
apply.
that opinion.
Yeah? Good
That
thought.
falls in July, if I'm thinking
Yeah.
right. So if we did something that it would have to fall between June, July, and August, that way it keeps out the beginning month and the end month, and there's no issue right
Okay.
there.
All right, thanks, sir. I think. Was that a motion?
I don't know that it was yet. I was kind of hoping Clint
It
would
is-
come up with some perfect writing for me.
Well, I think you're doing exactly what you want to do, though, by stating those months, June, July, August.
I will make it a motion to amend it with some clarification on when those 2 nights off
Asking-
shall be.
So you would be asking for the insertion of June, July, or
June,
August
July, and August.
to
as-
be,
One of the days.
As the months, and one of the dates to be the Madison County Fair date.
okay,
I'll second that.
okay. A motion with a second. We will look to these 2 to get the perfect writing down there, but to add the date of the Madison County Fair in there, do we need to look at the date of the Stanton County Fair? No? Okay. All right. We won't then.
That's always the end of September anyway.
Oh, okay, all right. So acknowledging that the Madison County Fair will be one of the off Saturday nights as well as one other Saturday night in the month of June, July, or August.
Exactly.
Okay, that is the motion. With a second, all in favor, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, Councilman Clausen abstaining, motion carries.
Okay. Any other? I think we've covered all.
I don't have a special permit to put on here. I just want to stress that what he just said is what we're talking about, to be a good neighbor. He's looking out for other events in Madison County. We have to, if we pass this, protect the neighbors, which we try and do whenever we have concerts up at Skyview, Big Bang Boom. We try and do the best we can. We have to work together on this because they are going to be very sensitive to anything they do. They're going to have support each other and put, pick up the trash and do that. So anything they can do to be a good neighbor is going to be listened to here and make our decision part of the process, I think.
I don't think you're going to get any more argument from anyone here. So certainly, Kathy, come on forward. You've been very patient.
My name's Kathleen Rocky. I appeared at the hearing, the public hearing that was held a week and a day ago, and we spent about 3 hours that night talking about this conditional use permit. I'm going to take this discussion in a different direction, and I'm going to tell you how the people on the other side feel. When we were here at a public hearing a week ago, the hearing was opened. We were told that the typical rules of evidence didn't apply. We presented exhibits. We had witnesses testify, as did the other side. That night, the hearing was closed, and we were told that a subcommittee would meet. And we're fine with the subcommittee meeting. We don't have an issue with that. What we do have an issue with is what has transpired in the last week. What's happened in the last week is, in your council packet, you have now approved version C, which includes an entirely new site plan that wasn't before this body when we held a public hearing a week and a day ago. We didn't get an opportunity to present new evidence. We didn't get an opportunity to call new witnesses. You met as a subcommittee, and if you look, if the site plan could be put up on the big screen, the point I'm trying to make, I think, will be very clear. There's a date stamp on the site plan that is submitted and attached to version C. That is a date stamp of last Friday, October 24th. Included in the council packet as an attachment is a 2-page document. I'm not certain who the author of that document is. It might be a city official. It might be the applicant. I'm uncertain. That's enclosure number 8, page 27 of the council packet. And in that is a document entitled Notes and Response to the Points Brought Up in the Appeal. I don't know if that's part of version C. I don't know if that's part of the site plan. And perhaps it's just the attempt on the part of the city to summarize the concerns and things brought forth in this new site plan. But the fact of the matter is, the applicant has been given a second opportunity to put in evidence before this body through the use of either this subcommittee venue or through the submission of totally new site plans. We think that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. We had a public hearing. We filed an appeal to have that public hearing held. We presented our evidence that night of the public hearing, and the applicant was given an opportunity we weren't given to put forth evidence in front of this body. If you approve this conditional use permit version C that says you are approving site plan with a date stamp of October 24, 2014, that is a violation of the rules of that public hearing, and that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. There's a lot of problems with version C. First of all, version C still does not address how many decibels of sound we're talking about regulating as part of this conditional use permit. It doesn't tell your official how many decibels of sound. It doesn't tell your citizens how many decibels of sound. There is absolutely no measuring stick other than someone's representation that a muffler will do the job. We still don't know how that's going to be enforced, and we don't know how loud it is going to be. There is nothing in this conditional use permit that does anything to address the concerns about the organic farm, which is absolutely next door on the west side of this proposed racetrack facility. In the conditional use permit hearing that was held, there was no evidence presented by the applicant as to why we had to move so quickly to approve this project now. There's been comments made alluding to the need to do this, but there's no evidence that was presented at this public hearing as to why it's so necessary that we must move forward so fast and so quickly that we're not giving this the time and attention that it deserves. If you're going to allow the applicant to come in after a public hearing and put forth new documents, in effect, new testimony and new evidence, then that's wrong. That doesn't smell right. That's not the way this city should operate if you're going to represent that you're conducting a public hearing and giving everybody an opportunity to speak about this very important issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. What's our-
I guess I would have a question for Kathy. You did attend some of the subcommittee meetings during the Planning Commission process, is that right?
I attended one, yes.
Okay. And at that time, you asked to be notified of any further
Yes.
meetings?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I did.
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else that wants to speak to this, or I think certainly where we are with it right now is, I think what I feel we need to do is we need to go forward, and you help me, Clint. I'm a little confused on, I mean,
Mayor, this is Dennis. I just would like to make one comment.
yeah.
The notes and responses to the points brought up in the appeal, that document was prepared by the applicant. That's not a City of Norfolk staff
Oh,
document.
okay. Appreciate that. Does this, I guess my question is, where are we with it then?
Two things. I wrote down 5 things that Ms. Rocky articulated concerns about. 1, concern about the site plan. 2, no decibels. 3, no organic farm concerns. 4, no evidence in regard to the the desire to go fast. I think that's kind of what she said. And 6, if there were new documents allowed, that's not fair. I'm not going to pretend to be and I'll leave out the violations of the public meetings law because I don't think those occurred. Here's why I don't think those occurred. The subcommittee met. The subcommittee, through that discussion process, talked about things that the subcommittee wanted to propose to the rest of the council be on the site plan. The subcommittee meeting was attended by the elected officials, 4 council people, the mayor, city staff. There was nobody there that would have been, I guess for lack of a better reference, there would be no proponents or opponents of the proposed conditional use permit that were present at that meeting. After the subcommittee meeting, the staff was directed to contact the site, I guess the applicant who had generated the site plan with things that came from that discussion that were, as I understood it, desired by the subcommittee to be included in the site plan. So maybe it's a matter, I think at some point in time, it in effect became the site plan that the subcommittee was going to propose to the full council, and did propose to the full council for your collective consideration. I would agree that there's nothing in the, I would agree that there's nothing in the, in version C that's before the council that came from the subcommittee that addresses decibels. I would agree, that's the second one. The third one, I would agree that there's nothing that addresses the organic farm concerns that Ms. Rocky says were articulated at the last meeting, and obviously there was some discussion about that. The notion that there's no evidence as to why things need to go so fast, I don't know how fast is all in the eyes of the beholder. What's happened here is that this process, from the time the application came to the Planning Commission, has gone forward in the way that those applications normally go forward, with a couple of deviations that lengthened the process, that being a discussion with a subcommittee meeting that Ms. Rocky got invited to. I didn't get invited to it, but there was the meeting that was had with planning commissioners, proponents, opponents, I think a couple of city councilmen and elected officials that were present there, as well as the tabling of the appeal, the resolution that accompanied the appeal last week to go forward. So I suspect that whether this is fast or not fast depends upon the eyes of the beholders. As to the last thing about new documents, Dennis, I think that I understand that what's entitled the notes and response was something that was put together. I thought that was also at direction of the planning or of the subcommittee, saying these concerns were present there. I think that it was contemplated that when we went through with those things, that the version C, which came from the Planning Commission, included version C, included these notes and response, and included the site plan, as well as the added item which explained, I think you addressed it, Dennis, that said that when a conditional use permit is granted to anybody for any purpose, one of the things that the City of Norfolk ordinance provides is that conditional use permit, the resolution passed either by the Planning Commission or whatever action would happen upon appeal before this body, that is filed in the Register of Deeds office, so that anybody that looks at the records in the real estate office can find that and see that these are the conditions, or so on and so forth. So that's what we've tried to do, is to recognizing that some of the smaller things that are on the site plan aren't going to be very legible. If you go down and look at, if this were to be approved and it were to be filed of record, you could go down to the Register of Deeds office, you might not be able to read it. So that's why we had contemplated in such event putting in the page that says, hey, this is here, you may not be able to read it, there's where the originals are. So with that being said, I think that's how those came about. At some point in time, the site plan, which had its genesis, its origination with the applicant, I think it became your site plan, subject to your manipulation. You, rather than start over from scratch, your subcommittee directed to have things put in to the site plan or to address those things. And I think that's the response that I would make to where you're at tonight.
Clint, given that there was an official appeal on the table of this project, at the time that it was decided to make contact with the developers, informing them of the modifications from the subcommittee, was there consideration that the representative of that appeal should be notified of those modifications as well?
I'm not aware of any of that. I would also say that, the information that's in the revised version C, I think everybody saw that at the same time.
I guess it just leads to an initial point I had about the process we undertook with this. I think there is a fairness issue, given that there was an official appeal made that the representative of the appeal makers had been included in proposed modifications to the project. And gets to my larger point. Again, I'm not opposed to racing, but this project, it seems like there's been a lot of emphasis on hurrying up and getting through the various processes. And I was a little tough on the Planning Commission last week, just because that's kind of uncharacteristic for the way we usually handle things. I think the Planning Commission typically does a very good job of careful analysis, and I think the city staff does as well. This project, though, I feel has taken a different approach.
You know, Josh, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with maybe the feelings that this has been pushed or moved too fast. It's required so much time and effort, though, by many parties here to try to bring forward something that as elected officials, we can make a decision on. Again, there are certainly, we're sitting here tonight in a special meeting because I believe that they deserve an answer. And it's up to this elected body to make that decision. Whether it's yay or nay, that is your decision to make. How we got here, I think, I don't disagree that there's been a lot of time and effort spent to get us to where we are. And certainly they are very deserving of a site plan that really is laid out so that those that are much smarter than I can look at that site plan and have their questions answered. I think that's probably what started it, Josh. It was maybe the inability for those of concern to be able to see a site plan that really made them comfortable with the situation. But I don't know. I guess my feeling is we can beat up all we want the process here, and I won't say it's the best. Can we do better? Absolutely. Can we help our planning commission? Absolutely. And one thing that we will do, I have seen a layout that is handed when someone comes in with a proposal on a project. We're going to have a specific handout that lets them know the steps and what is necessary to come back to the planning commission and then move forward. So your point is well made, but I guess at this point, we're where we're at. And, yeah, go ahead. I'm rambling.
Couple of things as I'm sitting here. I'm gonna argue with myself now. I said that the organic farm concerns weren't addressed. I think they've been addressed in a couple of ways. One is there's a stormwater, the stormwater ordinance that addresses the SWIP addresses the concerns of the organic farmer. The other thing that addresses them, I don't remember what that was that your purported expert, your guy was here last week, Kathy, that talked about it. He talked about the regulations, and I remember when I went and looked at the regulations while I was sitting up here a week ago Monday night, it talked about the organic farmer needing to address buffers. It talked about the organic farmer needing to provide for the the transmittal of water through there. So I think that between those two, I think that there has been some concern addressed to the organic farm concerns. I also think that one of the things that this process has put through here is that I don't think that all site plans are created equal. I think that, how valuable is the site plan for purposes of saying that I'm for or I'm against this proposal of a racetrack here? The notion here that I suspect that there's nothing you could add or subtract from the site plan that somebody would say, oh, if that's put on the site plan or if that's removed from the site plan, suddenly I'm for that. Or my objection to that disagrees. So, part of it says that the site plan that's been presented here and talked about, yeah, the code says that there should be a site plan. Is the site plan there to help bring things forward? Is a site plan that's present for the conditional use permit the same sort of site plan that accompanies a building permit, so that the building codes officials, when it's put into effect with a building permit, can ascertain that there's compliance with ADA and all of those sorts of things. I think that I think that there's limitations to how that public process can work. I think that there's been a lot of concern about it. I've been to not all the meetings, but I've been to many of the meetings where you've heard about what the concerns are, and I think that maybe not in a perfect manner, but yet I think the elected officials have done a pretty decent job of trying to make their way through the multitude of those concerns.
Mayor, I will also add that
Speak up, Shane.
best management practices for pest control and vegetation control are identified in your conditional use permit. Also, I will add that, as far as the fastness of this, as a fire chief, now I've been your city administrator for a number of years, and it's rare that I've heard that staff or council, you move too fast. It's usually, my Lord, it's gonna take you that long to get an approval process for my project. No wonder we don't get anything built in this town. Those kind of comments were made. So when you say that we move too fast, or when there's an inference left that we move too fast on this, I really question that. I do have a timeline here I can provide for you, Mayor, and council, if you'd like.
Oh, I think I remember. But
August 18th was the first time that the application fee was received and conditional use permit to operate the shop. That's when we received it, on August 18th. Now it's October 28th. So I do believe that the fastness or the slowness is in the eye or in the beholder of the person going through the process. The staff manages many processes for you, and we try to do it with an eye on customer service, because we're told daily from the elected officials and from this community, in one fashion or another, you have to look out for the citizen. You are public servants. I preach it to my staff frequently. We, at the end of the day, are public servants, so we have to try to look out for the applicant. Whether their idea is good, bad, or indifferent, we have to try to look out for the applicant, the citizen, and move them through a process to get them to a place where the elected officials or the planning commission members can act, and that's what we've done. I think collectively, that's what we've done. So I take some offense, to be honest with you, that there's some inference left that the staff either managed this poorly or moved too fast on this process, because we have not. We've merely followed orders, we followed direction, and we took this process exactly where it needed to be, and that's to your decision there point as a council. And I'm sorry that this decision is difficult for you. I understand it's difficult, but at the end of the day, it's a decision that you have to make, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, and well stated. I certainly, does it feel like at times it was fast-paced? Absolutely, because there was so much time given to it. Maybe that's, again, I go back to, Shane's absolutely right. We are here to serve and service, and our objective, I believe, is to make sure that what we're doing is the best thing for the community. We certainly want to for, should we decide that this is a project that we want to see go forward, we want it to be successful. We want our citizens successful in their endeavors in their business. So, believe me, we have worked very hard to try to come up with conditions that will at least give some credence to the efforts and the concerns that you have had. And again, Ms. Rocky Kathy referred to, I'm sorry, I don't do that well, Kathy, Ms. Rocky. She referred to the decibels. This group, as far as the subcommittee, talked long and hard. And we just felt that it was a difficult number to try to put on something that maybe we weren't able to certainly know what that number is. So we did what we felt was the best thing, the very best thing that we would be able to control, and that was the mufflers. So we have done due diligence on this. I believe, sir? You back, come forward and state your name for us. And
I'm the organic farmer they talked about, Wolf, first name Dwayne.
Sure.
I've been an organic farmer since 2009. That's a few years before the racetrack, our off-road race came into existence, but that's not important. I'm not against racing either, and I would love to see racing continue in Norfolk. Unfortunately, I just wouldn't like it next door to me, and I've had probably 25 people say they feel sorry for having a racetrack that close, and not one person said how lucky I am to have it next door to me. So that being said, we do have an issue to settle. I do thank you guys for taking the time to hear both sides of it, because nobody, or almost nobody against it, has a right to vote for you. And those, you're not representing us because you voted for it, but because you're good people. And I thank you for hearing our side. There's a couple items that haven't been addressed, really. The livestock, it won't kill my cows, it won't hurt them to a point where you can visually see it. It causes stress, but it causes probably more stress than the owners of the livestock having to hear the noise one night a week. Dust control on Old Highway 8, that could be a problem because that highway really gets dusty in the summertime, and cars going by there, a lot of them, creates a lot of dust. It could be a traffic hazard. Trash pickup is said now that it's not responsible on the private property.
Yeah.
So it would make me responsible to pick up the trash, which if they do generate it, I think they'll do a good effort to keep it under control. I will have to plant my own trees if I want a sound barrier in between me and the racetrack, and I'll have to bear that expense, plus have to give up some agricultural land, which is quite valuable, to grow the trees. The off-road racetrack has a chance now to be a good neighbor. If you do go ahead and give them the permit to have the racetrack, I'd like them to consider dropping the dirt bike track over there, which gives us noise 7 days a week, and it's probably more annoying than a racetrack. Stock car racetrack would be one night a week. I'd like to see them end that, if possible.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, one more minute.
Yep.
Okay, the other thing, what if the racetrack doesn't fly? They build it, but it doesn't financially prove feasible? What becomes of what's left of it? They have the responsibility to remove it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And again, I appreciate your words. Certainly, I guess, though, at this point, I see nothing else before us other than for a decision to be made by the elected officials here. So unless...
I'd like to just say
Yeah.
one thing. I'd like to let everybody know that the subcommittee that occurred last week, Thursday, I believe it was, Wednesday, excuse me, from 11 to 1:30 as the minutes show that way. I was in attendance at that. I was in attendance, I should say, from 11 till just prior to noon time because I had a previous commitment of 3 weeks in front of that for another meeting at noon. So, no, I wasn't there for the entire situation, but I was there during this. The point that I'm trying to get at is Yes, at last week's meeting on Monday night, I said the site plan had a ton of holes in it. And it had a ton of holes in it because it was presented on an 8.5 by 11 sheet or smaller, and I was trying to read it. And I will tell you, my job on a daily basis requires that I review plans and specs, and that's part of the building situation. I did not feel comfortable with the information that was presented at that time. And so the questions that I went into that meeting with was, okay, give me clarification of what is on this drawing. Well, when it's presented at a decent scale and that these items were there, it's just that you can't read them at 8.5 by 11, or I can't read them. It's probably had something to do with my age, I don't know, but, so the site plan did not change, as was implied, drastically from anything that way. It was basically the input that I wanted clarification on, and if I didn't have clarification on it, I could not support it because it wasn't a site plan that showed the information that I felt was needed. That information was clarified and presented on forward significantly. Nothing really changed from the little 8.5 by 11 to what we have, other than that the drawings were so that you could read scale numbers on it. I still struggle with some of the ones up there, but I was not looking at the time for grades or anything along that line, but I did need clarification on how things access into the site. So I would tell you that what was presented as being additional evidence, I don't feel that that's accurate. I feel that it was clarification of the original evidence that was presented. And when you can't read something, you got to ask for clarification on it, so.
Okay. All right. Council, are we ready for me to call the question, comment?
I would like to make one comment.
Sure.
I got a ton of emails from both sides. I got a ton of phone calls from both sides. Both sides have good points. I want to address something that Dwayne said. We did talk about the trash, and we had it at 100 feet, I think, which would have made about 20 acres. They would have had to clean up. They would have had to come on your property. You probably don't want them going through your corn and that, so we cut it back to doing their ditches. But they have been talked to about being a good neighbor, spraying when it's away from your land, picking up garbage, not throwing out garbage would be the best thing. If all the racers just take their garbage home, there's no problem. So a lot of these things were addressed. We can't really put them in here because it would affect, if we put that in there, it'll affect you. You might want them on your land, but the neighbors over on the other street don't. So we looked at a lot of different things and took everybody's advice into a lot of this stuff. So things were heard, things were addressed. They may not have showed up because of some certain reasons. So I just want you to know I heard everybody. I'm trying to protect everybody, and then we have to make our own decisions to protect Norfolk, so.
Well, and I agree with what's been said here tonight. Certainly, it's one of the toughest ones I've ever been involved in, and I was on the Planning Commission for 13 years. So there are tough decisions to be made. But in the end, as I believe an elected official's responsibility is, each one of us has maybe different ideas and different thoughts, and certainly we've heard from a lot of people, as has been stated. And again, they've all been heard, but my gut is that that's exactly what you need to do. You need to look deep into what it is that you believe the right thing, and that's the vote. I ask that you respect these elected officials for doing their job. They have worked hard at it and tried hard to be able to comply with all the different requests. But at the end of the day, we're never going to keep everyone happy. And so with that, I'm going to ask if you're ready to make a motion to go forward. There is not a motion on the floor to do anything with this at this point. So are we ready to make a motion?
Your Honor, I would move approval of resolution version C with the, I believe, 2 amendments that were voted on and approved.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor for approval of. Do I have a second?
I'd second that, Your Honor.
All right, a motion?
Your Honor, I'd just make a note that I echo some of the things you said on both sides. We listened to both sides, try to be fair. I do have concerns, I have to be honest, about the process. I think there were some holes. Going back to the Planning Commission, one week there's talk about trees that disappeared. There was a call for an engineering study, disappeared. I do question why contact wasn't made to the sponsor of the appeal about modifications coming out of the subcommittee when contact was made to the developers. And with that, I'll stop.
I can address
Okay,
that, Mayor.
it'll be in the record.
I guess I didn't hear that question clearly, Councilman.
The question is why we did not notify the sponsor of the appeal of the modifications coming out of the subcommittee.
That we notified the applicant and we didn't notify the opposition?
Well, from what Clint said, I understood that contact was made with the applicant in terms of modifications.
You mean
Made
after
it-
the subcommittee meeting?
Yes, sir.
Here's what happened, and there was no notification made to the applicant. The applicant, however, two of them, after the meeting Monday night, the discussion, Kevin, Mr. Signor came and asked me what the process would be. I said, he said, you know, we're under a time crunch. To get to your fast comment, maybe this will explain some of that. We're under a time crunch because we want to build this track this year in order to let the ground settle and make the track come together. I'm not a construction guy. It makes some pretty good sense to me from a common sense standpoint. Also, they indicated that IMCA is holding Saturday night, and someone in the room probably can clarify this better than I can, for Norfolk. Norfolk apparently had racing for 50 years on Saturday night. IMCA is holding that night, apparently. This is what I was told, for Norfolk. So if they get a track in place by next year, get the ground settled, get it built, and get it next year, they will have that Saturday night. So for what it's worth, that's what was told. He asked me what could be done. I said, potentially, you can have a special council meeting. If the mayor or the elected officials wanted a special council meeting, they could have that special council meeting. The same question, I believe, was asked to Councilman Merrill, and he answered very similar to that, and he can obviously speak for himself. So that's where the special council meeting idea came from and was indicated to them. We also, from this body, the staff was indicated to move forward to a subcommittee
Yes.
meeting to provide clarity in the site
Yes.
plan and provide clarity in the CUP language.
Yes.
Which that subcommittee met. I decided not to include the opposition, or recommended not to include. We didn't call the opposition, nor did we call the applicant. So they weren't there. This, in my mind, and I hope I was wrong, I hope I was right, I mean, I could have been wrong, but in my mind, testimony had been provided on multiple occasions to the elected officials, to the planning commission members, to one subcommittee where the applicant and the opposition was there already. You heard that testimony, then you heard it again at your council meeting last Monday night. What I heard the council's discussion being, they wanted to have a chance for that subcommittee to meet to provide clarity in those two items, the site plan and additional uses. So that's who we called. We had neither party there. It's clean. The elected officials can speak to it. The subcommittee elected officials can speak to it clearly.
Okay,
After that, I don't know if this is important, but what happened is not,
Right.
the inference is not correct.
No, the question is were the outcomes of
Yeah,
that subcommittee expressed to the applicant and not to the sponsor of the appeal?
Kevin Signor, Jerry Poshfisher called me on Thursday, I believe it was. I might have it written down, and asked her, we're going to have a subcommittee meeting, the special council meeting. I said, we're under direction to prepare for a special council meeting, Kevin and Jerry, if and only if you have your site plan here by noon on Friday. He said, we'll have it there. They got it here at noon on Friday. And we reviewed it, as we should, as staff, and we placed it in the packets, and we sent that out to all parties at the same time. So they didn't, there was no special thing made to the applicant that wasn't made to the opposition, so that's not true.
so we
But they
have,
did ask me, and I told them we was preparing for a special council meeting.
very good. I appreciate the clarification, Shane. Is there,
Again, I guess.
Josh? I
I don't
understand
know
what
if
you're
we got
saying.
an answer to the question. Were the modifications that were made at the subcommittee meeting expressed to the applicant?
No, they were expressed in your packet, is
Okay.
how I'd answer that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, council? We have a motion, we have a second. I'm going to ask that you vote, please.
Voting in favor of Resolution Version C with the two amendments, councilpersons Granquist, Langy, Merrill, Murin, Faust. Voting against the resolution, Moaning, File. Abstaining, Councilman Clausen.
So,
So,
motion,
motion carries.
all right. It has been a long process. I've enjoyed time with you all. I do ask all of you that are going to be part of the racing, all of you that are part of the racing community, you're taking huge responsibility along with those that are accepting the responsibility to provide this. So please, be the neighbor that we're counting on you to be. Make it successful. Do your due diligence on this. And again, thanks to everybody for your time and your patience, and let's move forward as a community. We are adjourned.